Tim Hodges. Kathy McKinnon.
Here.
George Perez.
Here.
Franklin Perry.
Here.
Sarah Sanders.
Here. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, we're done with that. Then looking at the agenda today, we have 2 action items and several reports. We have reports from our external auditors and internal auditors. And I'd also like to welcome the board chair and CEO for joining our committee meeting today. With that, I'll turn it over to Hazim for the first action item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, everybody. Happy Thursday. This morning, I have 2 resolutions for your consideration. The first resolution is to authorize CHFA to issue up to 225 million of the Housing Mortgage Finance Program bonds. The sale will allow CHFA to raise 100 million of lending proceeds for first-time homebuyer program, preserve 100 million of prepayments, and refund about 25 million of outstanding bonds. For the last quarter, CHFA purchased about 84 million. CHFA will utilize fixed rate and a floating rate structures and overlay a swap and expect to close around March. RBC is assigned as the book running manager for the bonds. I'll be happy to answer any questions regarding the resolution.
Hazim, Jerry Abrahams. So for the swap, what floating rate will you be receiving on the swap?
SIFMA.
Okay.
So it's going to be a SIFMA swap.
Okay. And the SIFMA swap is and the reason for doing a portion swap is what? As opposed to doing all fixed rate?
Oh, yeah, it's just trying to make sure that we are able to maximize the spread.
Maximize the spread to?
Yeah,
I mean,
for our cost of financing, yeah.
Okay.
I have a question. I keep hearing about interest rates going up and starting in March. Will that affect any of the strategy for this year in terms of bond issues or how you borrow money?
Yes, in terms of the structure. So one of the things that what we are able to achieve, and and trying to piggyback on Jerry's question, is if you remember late last year at the November meeting, we talked about changing how we price our single family mortgage loans and then tweaking the lender compensation. Through that whole execution, we are also able to tweak how we set our mortgage rates. So through and with that whole process, the use of variable rate, we saw that we can essentially minimize it. So depending to how the market moves going into the 2022, we are going to tweak the structure and manage it. What we will see, and or at least based on what we've been hearing, when the Fed increase the interest rate, it's mostly going to impact on the front end of the yield curve. So essentially is the short-term rates. Mm-hmm. What we are more mindful about is when the Fed start tapering off the bond purchase or letting go all the assets that they purchase, which include long-term bonds along with mortgage-backed securities. Mm-hmm. So when they start unloading that, we know for a fact that there's going to be an uptick in long-term interest rate. So that impacts CHFA's program more than the Fed raising the short-term rates, because we borrow for long because we are
Right.
offering a 30-year mortgage. So the strategy when it comes to the variable is more trying to manage the curve itself between the short term and the long term, and trying to find that optimal point for us to offer a below market interest rate, but also having the ability to reap a certain amount of spread so that we can pay for our overhead.
Thank you.
And
Azim, are you
Hazim,
going to bid the swap, or I know you have limited number of counterparties that meet your requirements. Are you going to bid it?
Yes, yes. We actually, like, for the last year plus, the rating agency had upgraded a few more counterparties. So they are in fact qualify under our requirements. At the same time, back in 2014, we did amend the general resolution to permit a provider that has a single A rating. However, they are required to post collateral. So we did widen the net, but then at the same time, they do need to qualify and meet certain requirements.
it should be interesting as rates rise, that you actually, some of those collateral provisions may actually get implicated for us. It's, my guess is, you know, all our swaps are basically, you know, out of the money for us. And so it'll be interesting when that flips. We pay really close attention to that going forward.
Right, right.
And SIFMA synthetic fixed swap rates are going to be at or through fixed rate after adjusting for the non-callability.
Right. So right now, for the SIFMA, we're looking at the mid rate is around 161, even after what transpired yesterday. So that's the mid. So we think that it will be between 165 and ish after they put the spread in.
Okay, that's fair.
I know a lot of your swaps have 10-year calls, or I thought they did. Is this one going to be callable?
Yes. Well, so that's one of the things that we are going to look at very closely, and we're going to implement for this deal. We are doing a lot of what I call recalibration, because what transpired in 2021, we did pursue and perform certain defensive moves because we saw asset runoff. We were trying to capture the low interest rate, reduce our interest expense, and then manage our prepayment. So as we go into 2022, or now we're in 2022, and we change the lender compensation, we are coming out with certain programs, certain initiatives to help first-time home buyer, which we hope will increase production. Therefore, depending to that outcome, we are able to manage the proceeds and make sure that we can deliver and we don't overcommit. So that's all this calibration, trying to figure out what would be the best mechanism, the swap, making sure that we are not locking ourselves and then putting future administration in a position where, you know, it's hard for them to manage the cash flow.
Any other questions or comments? Can I have a motion?
I'll move. Jerry Abrahams.
Second?
Second, Kathy.
Any further discussion? Roll call vote.
Jerry Abrahams,
Aye.
Alexander Dom.
Aye.
Tim Hodges.
Aye.
Kathy McKinnon,
Aye.
George Perez,
Yes.
Franklin Perry,
Yes.
Sarah Sanders.
Yes.
It's unanimous.
Your next action item is allocation of the state carry forward. Hazim.
Thank you. Last December, the State Bond Commission awarded CHFA $225,138,740 of unused 2021 private activity bond volume cap. To preserve the award, the Internal Revenue Code requires us to file a carry forward application by February 15. We are recommending the approval to carry forward $150 million for multifamily and the rest for single family. In addition, on December 21st of last year, the Census Bureau announced that the state experienced an increase in population by 48,591 residents. The increase impacted CHFA's 2022 tax exempt volume cap allocation and the 9% low-income housing tax credit calculation. And the 2022 lending plan has been updated accordingly. I'll be happy to answer any questions regarding the resolution.
Any questions for Hazim? May I have a motion?
Moved.
Second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call vote.
Jerry Abrahams,
Aye.
Alexandra Dom,
Aye.
Tim Hodges,
Aye.
Kathy McKinnon,
Aye.
George Perez,
Yes.
Franklin Perry,
Yes.
Sarah Sanders.
Yes.
It's unanimous.
Before we go to the reports, I just want to say hello to Alexandra Dom. I don't think I've met you. I see you with DECD. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Sarah. Yes, I'm the Deputy Commissioner at DECD, going on 2 years now. And since Glenn left the agency a couple months ago, I'll be joining you. And I think it'll be permanent. Even though we have a replacement for her coming on, I will continue to sit on the CHFA board. And I have a little, prior to this, I was a multifamily developer. So I'm excited to,
Oh,
for on the West Coast for market rate. So not exactly a perfect match, but at least certainly in the same world. And I'm looking forward to working with you all.
welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, now to our reports, beginning with our external auditor from CLA, Ron Nozek.
Yeah. So before Ron and Jessica start discussing about our other plan, I just want to mention that since CHFA operates on a calendar year basis, every year, every January, I should say, and as part of the auditor's due diligence, our auditor, CLA, is required to present to the Finance Committee and Board the audit plan for the last business cycle. The idea is to ensure the auditor has a good understanding of our business, evaluate the risks, apply the necessary protocols, and respond to any feedback from board members. Based on the plan, the auditor believes it will be able to complete its work and issue its opinion before the April board meeting. With that, I will hand it to Ron to go through the 2021 audit plan.
Thank you. Just to check, you can all hear me? Okay, perfect. First, this is year 6 for us, so many of you have been through this exercise with us before. I'll be relatively brief, and I'm a little handicapped as well. I'm in day 8 of a cold. I know the testing protocols at my local hospital quite well for COVID. I've had 3 of them in the last 8 days because I just couldn't accept the fact that a cold wasn't moving through me quick enough. But I hope I don't have to pause for a minute. But if I do, please understand it's got to do with that. So I'm not sure if you all have the slide deck that I provided management relative to the audit plan, I'm going to go through that real quickly, but I don't see it on screen, so I don't know if I'm speaking to you blindly or not relative to that.
Yeah, Ron, you can just, so Lorraine is managing the slides. So feel
Okay.
free to just let her know which page you want her to focus on.
Sure. Okay, so if we just jump ahead one slide, this is just a table of contents. This is what we'll go through today, and I understand again that you've all been through this, so I'm going to move pretty quickly and just kind of check on highlights that are important relative to communication to all of you, as well as maybe some minor changes to the audit plan itself. So go ahead and jump ahead relative to the engagement team. We are glad to report that we're going to have significant consistency here. All three of the primary engagement team members, myself, Jessica Aniskoff, who is also on the call, and Avery Whitaker, have been performing the work at CHFA for the external audit over at least the past 3 years, I think even the last 4. So we have a great sense of understanding relative to the organization. And to be honest with you, all very talented folks that we're bringing to the table relative to this. A new name you probably haven't heard, Heather Plitt, is our assigned national reviewer. I think you all are aware that CLA acquired Bloom Shapiro. We were, myself, Jessica, and Avery were formerly with Bloom Shapiro. We were a regional firm, and our second reviews or technical reviews were done in-house, not through a national office. That has changed. So Heather is our national reviewer. She did the review on the 2020 audit. So she too is familiar with the organization to some extent. So go ahead and jump ahead again. This is just some information relative to the fact that the entire engagement team is up to date with their CPE's continuing professional education requirements. We go through an independence determination annually for all of our audit engagements, in particular when there is debt hanging out there that people could be relative or it could possibly be invested in. So we have all been determined to be independent of CHFA and therefore qualified to perform the audit. And then something we're relatively proud of, and hopefully it shows through to management, is that myself and Jessica are very active in the engagement itself. We don't just throw a bunch of young kids at you and grind through work. So that will continue to be the case. Go ahead and move ahead if you will. You can jump again. So these few slides I'll go through real quickly. Basically, these are all components of what is called the SAS 114 required communications to those charged with governance. And we're required to provide them to you at 2 different phases of the audit engagement. In the planning phase, which is this information here. And then there's also a final SAS 114 communication that comes to you once we issue the financial statements, and the components relative to that communication are a little bit different. But basically what this is doing is just, and I'm not going to read through the bullets here, but it's explaining what our responsibility is under generally accepted auditing standards to CHFA as your external auditor. And obviously and primarily our responsibility is to audit and issue an opinion on the financial statements as to whether or not they fairly represent the financial position and results of operations of CHFA for the fiscal year, in this case, or for the year ended December 31, 2021. Plan timing and scope, we have completed preliminary field work that was done back in December. We're about a month away from coming in and performing our final field work. Those will be the weeks of February 21 and 28. And then we do schedule wrap-up work a couple weeks after we leave the field or a week after we leave the field. Typically when we leave the field, We're leaving some inquiries and other open items with management for resolution. So we kind of get out of management's hair, if you will, allow them to address those inquiries and get back to us with them, and then we'll go through that a week later. And usually that also begins the process of my review as the engagement principal, as well as the technical reviewer once I'm completed. So go ahead and jump again, if you would. And then this slide here just basically goes through what CHFA's management's responsibility is under generally accepted auditing standards. And for the most part, what it's telling you is that management is responsible for the financial statements, for the accounting systems and financial reporting systems that are designed to allow them to develop those financial statements. Our responsibility, as I said, under CLA is to audit what management has provided us relative to the financial statements. So the terminology often used is management's assertions, and those assertions are embedded in the financial statements and the notes of the financial statements. So go ahead and jump again. These two slides, the next two slides are basically just explaining what our reporting requirements are to you. So if there are any internal control matters that we come upon during the performance of the audit, we're required to and will report those to you through our internal control report. If there are material weaknesses and significant deficiencies, we will also report those. Those would be components also in your federal and state single audits if those are encountered. To date, in the 5 years we have done the work, we haven't had any such instances. And then the restricted use is just explaining to you that there's going to be a paragraph in there relative to who these are designed to be read. Go ahead and jump again. Those are just this really is relative to communication, and the next few slides we'll blow right through. I've said this, the 5 years I've been here, and reiterated it again. Who we're working for is the audit committee and the board. We work with management, but we answer to you, those charged with governance. So if there are any issues or concerns that you have, we encourage you to reach out to us directly. You can certainly reach out through management as well, but in these instances, either method will work. But if you have concerns or you're aware of matters or issues that are pertinent to the financial statements or the financial reporting system, it really is important that you communicate those to us as soon as you are aware of them, because we may need to modify our audit plan. You may be aware of something that management is not, or management and members of management in this meeting, don't take this personally, but management may not want to convey something to us that you're aware of. So, it is very important that if you have concerns, convey them to us, and we'll deal with them relative to the audit plan. If it happens that we're at the exit meeting and we've completed the audit and concerns come out, there's nothing we can do at that point in time if by chance we didn't address those relative to our audit plan. So go ahead and jump forward. These are, so what we're getting into here really is the audit plan itself. I'm not going to go through all of these. We'll blast through these really quick. The only thing I wanted to convey to you at this meeting that's a little bit different from prior meetings is we will be under the CLA audit methodology this cycle, our last cycle with you, if you will. Last year, because of the timing of our merger with CLA, we were still under the audit methodology of Bloom Shapiro. So there is going to be some changes They are, for the most part, I think they will be transparent to management and certainly transparent to you, those charged with governance. But the primary differential is that CLA audit methodology puts a lot of focus on internal control and internal control testing. Now, we have always performed internal control testing relative to CHFA due to the number of transactions that take place. It often lends to a more efficient audit if you can test and then therefore rely on the internal control systems that are in place. But sample sizes are a little bit different. The calculation of sample sizes are a little bit different at CHFA. Additional control environments that perhaps Bloom felt were not significant may be found to be significant under CLA's methodology. So there certainly will be some changes to the work we've performed in the past. Most of it is going to be embedded in that internal control work. Everything else relative to the audit areas, transaction cycles and account balances, is going to be pretty much the same. That's relatively boilerplate, if you will, to those classifications, to the account classifications throughout all organizations. The only, probably differential here at CHFA is the swaps and the work we've got to do around the swaps. That's a little more unique, if you will, than most governmental entities. So go ahead and jump. I think there's at least 2 or 3 slides that are key audit areas, but again, for the most part, you've seen all of these over the 5 years, so I don't want to take up your time going through those. And then the other matters really are just, again, part of the 114 communications, things we have to report to you relative to what we're doing outside of audit services themselves. We have to evaluate those by standards to make sure that they're not causing any independence issues relative to the performance of the audit. So that's under the non-attest services that's listed there. Knowledge of fraud, again, this is really a request to you, those charged with governance, that if you are aware of anything, please, by all means, reach out to us, communicate it to us so that we can do something relative to it. And then I think that wraps us up. The last slide here, if you can jump ahead. Yeah, those are just the standards that are coming up. The slide ahead of it, if you could jump back just one. These are the upcoming standards that are going to be implemented over the next few years. There's really nothing in 2021 that we feel will impact CHFA. 2022 begins to 2022, 2023 begins to have some GASB standards that very likely will impact CHFA. And then just my final comments, because this is our last year. We've really appreciated the relationship that we've been able to build with CHFA, in particular its management. I have very, very high regard for the members of management in the finance function that we've worked with over the 6 years. They're incredibly capable and dedicated people. And to all of you board members, to those charged with governance, I say the same to you. It's a tremendously run organization from top to bottom, and I applaud you for all of that. So I wanted to say that before it's the last time you see me. I'll turn it back to you, Azim.
Questions for Ron? Okay, on to financial reports. Allison Murphy.
Good morning, all. Before you are the December financial reports, I do want to point out that these are preliminary. We are still in the process of making a few more adjustments to close out the books for the year. On the revenue side, mortgage loan and investment interest revenue are coming in 20.9 million below budget for the year and 16 million lower than prior year. The year-over-year revenue variances continue to be mainly driven by the net reduction in the authority's program assets, the asset runoff that Hazim was just referring to. In addition, short-term investment rates remain lower than prior year. The average stiff rate is about 82% lower this year than it was the prior year. Fees and other income are 7.4 million over budget for the year, and the main driver for this variance hasn't changed from what we've previously discussed. On the expense side, bond interest expense is below budget by 23.8 million and 15.5 million lower than prior year. As mentioned previously, the authority has issued more refunding bonds than long bonds, lowering our interest rates and costs. Administrative expenses are coming in 6.1 million under budget and 1.2 million higher than prior year. However, when you exclude salaries and benefits, the current year-to-date expenses are 125,000 lower than last year. And lastly, the change in net position is above target by 17.8 million for the year. Are there any questions?
I had a couple questions about the training and advertising. It seemed like training was really low this year and the prior year. And I'm wondering, is that just because of COVID, and is that impacting people's ability to do their job? I know I noticed in the executive director report that sort of staff development was, you know, a key priority in the strategic plan. So I was just curious about that. And then I was also curious about the advertising because that was a lot lower than what had been budgeted. And how does that affect the agency?
As far as the training goes, when we had prepared the budget last year, we had made the assumption that COVID would be over and things would be back to business as usual, which was not the case. So that's a big driver behind that number being lower. It is only slightly lower than 2020, but it is significantly under what we had budgeted. Advertising, we had some items in the strategic plan that I think folks were still looking at that never came to fruition. And I don't know, Hazim, if you have a little more color that you can add to that.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. We have all these plans, and just like how it's mentioned in the executive report, we know that there are certain key areas that we believe is very important for us to focus on and commit capital to. Is just more about the timing and the execution. So we are very hopeful for 2022 that all the things that we included in the plan, we're able to pursue. So training, making sure that staff is well equipped is key for us because they are in fact the driver for us to complete and achieve our mission. And then, you know, branding and getting, you know, trying to make sure that folks are aware who we are, what we do, trying to reduce the noise about, you know, misconception, perception, optics, you know, those things. So yes, we have everything in play. It's just more about trying to make sure that we have the vehicles. So it has nothing to do with funding. It has nothing to do with that we don't want to do it. It's just more about, you know, how to trying to do it the most ideal way and the best way.
The only thing I'm going to add to that is training is an important thing for us. So last year, in a first of its kind investment, CHFA did provide management training for all of our supervisors, managers, directors, you know, everybody above supervisor level. Had like a 6-month long leadership training Never, probably never done before, but it was extremely valuable. We got a lot of really good feedback. We met, once or twice a month for 6 months and really talked about, leadership styles and the whole gamut of things around leadership and managing a team and excelling. So going into 2022, we are looking at making programs like that, not one-offs, but more of an ongoing thing, and not just management training, but creating training programs that can really widen and broaden somebody's expertise beyond their field or their specific skill set. How to make somebody have sort of a wider array of skills that they can call on in doing the work that we're being asked to do. And the more complex it gets, the more we have to do things like write for business and things like that. And so I think we're looking at ways to bring all of that stuff. And as Hazim was saying, it is a matter of implementation and timing. So more than anything else.
Thank you.
Hazim, I think, one thing to note is the big picture here is we way outperformed our change in net position versus budget. We budgeted 1.1 increase in net position. We got 18.9 million, and that's outperformed by 17.8 million. And I recall this is kind of always the result. And I always ask about it, and it's in part because of the way you budget, and you need to budget conservatively because of the indenture. So I understand all that, but I think the big picture is, despite COVID, we have excellent results and change in net position. So recognize that.
Right. And then if you strip out and then just say from a cost of financing standpoint, if you look at the revenues from production versus the interest expense from the bonds, we have like a 1.5 times coverage there. So that's one of the things that we also look at, because the budget to run CHFA is the budget. That's our overhead. We know that there'll be a need to set aside a certain amount, whether it's 30 million, 40 million, but that's something we can call it like our fixed cost. But what we're trying to do, at least during COVID, we're trying to make sure that we are able to maximize our net return from our production versus our interest expense on the bonds. So that was one of the things that, when Alison was mentioning about the refunding bonds, we saw there was a lot of mismatch between loans, or we should say the receivables investment versus the bonds. So we were trying to make sure, that whatever structure that we implement, we are able to capture the efficiency and reduce the inefficiencies.
But this significant outperformance of the budget is kind of standard for CHFA, isn't that right?
It is kind of standard. So if you look at the budget report that we put forth for the board, when we go into the budget, we generally will set aside a 10% reserve within the line item for the aggregate, because that would allow us to move or reclassify if in an event certain things move. And we always want to make sure that we have the capital to push for the mission, because that's, to us, is the main driver, that we always try to be optimistic that production will grow and will rise. So if in an event, like, just like what Kathy was saying, if in an event that we need to spend more money on training, if we want to spend more on advertising, because it's important for CHFA, we want to make sure that we have the amount, and then we will report it to the board and said, oh, this is what we did, this is what we need for you to approve on, and this is what we need to, quote unquote, move the reclassification.
Hazim, does the higher than expected net position, what's the practical implication for that with respect to the opportunity fund and changes to the opportunity fund we made last year? So does that essentially mean that if right? Because I'm just trying to get, I don't quite understand how the position and the resolution, because essentially it's excess funds out of the resolution, which go to fund our opportunity fund, which I point out, I don't think we spent this year, which we can talk about later on, we look at the budget.
Right.
So does this basically mean that actually that $6 million of unspent money in the opportunity fund from, I guess, the fiscal year that carried forward to the next year, does it, like, I'm just trying to help me kind of figure that
Right.
out.
So for the opportunity fund, when you see the number opportunity fund, if it's 6, it actually means it's 12, the amount of
Right.
net, right? Because the way we
Available for
design
service, yeah.
is like 50-50, we split between ITA. So the in essence is 12. The thing about when you look at the net position, the net position is for our consolidated financial statements.
Yep.
And what that means is we do have multiple components within our consolidated. The opportunity fund is driven by our master indenture. So some of the numbers here is driven, or it includes numbers from other components.
Outside of the indenture.
Outside of the indenture, correct.
Right, so a portion of the net change in net position theoretically does include deposits to the opportunity fund, and
Right.
some of it's outside of it.
Right. You can say majority of it because the master indenture is over 4.5 billion, and then the smaller piece is only like about 60 million and change.
Well, I'll continue to reiterate, I think it's important. I mean, we're here to serve people, and it's important that as we have these resources in the opportunity fund, we do get it out. We get it out to satisfy the mission. Just
right.
Mandy,
Yes, we have that in our plan, and yes, we as management at CHFA, Nandini and I, along with the other leadership members, we have been discussing in terms of the importance of trying to push for the mission. And from the finance side, I've said this before, even during mortgage committee, that we don't want to sit on money. We want to put our money to work. So that's very important for us. So that's part of the reason why we are trying to make sure that we capture the pipelines. There's all this developer engagement process that we implemented. Lisa Hensley is working on other initiatives to promote first-time home buyer. Marcus is working on the marketing side. So there's all these initiatives that's part of the strategic plan, and I know that Nandini is also going to talk about the KPI. So the answer is yes to all the stuff that the board wants. We're trying to do it the best we can.
Thank you.
Any more questions on the financial report for fiscal year 21? On to Hazim, John Chilson for delinquency and forbearance.
Good morning. So for the month of December, the authority purchased 142 single-family loans, just under $30 million. And that represents an 85% increase in dollar value and a 69% increase in loan count over December 2020. Of those, of the 142 loans, 118 loans for totaling $25.2 million were securitized, or 83% of our production. The remaining 24 loans totaling $4.7 million were whole loans. The average loan size was $211,000. The December mortgage-backed security balance, the portfolio balance was $2.1 million at the end of December, which is a decrease of $4.4 million over the prior month. The whole loan portfolio through November declined by 157 loans, or $21 million, for a month-end balance of $1.25 billion. The overall delinquency rate declined by 6 basis points to 2.81%. And the carrying balance for loans in foreclosure year over year decreased by $12.6 million to $31 million, while the total number of loans decreased by 91. Also, for the month of December, the authority funded 106 down payment assistance loans totaling $1.4 million, with the average loan balance of $13,600. Approximately 3/4 of our December borrowers took advantage of the down payment assistance program. With regard to forbearances, at the end of November, 157 loans were in forbearance, totaling $118,000 of monthly P&I. involving $19 million of UPB, or 1.6% of our overall whole loan portfolio. Of those numbers, of the 157, though, 17% still made a payment in the month of November, despite being granted a forbearance. For the month of December, that number declined an additional 17 to 140. On our multifamily side, we closed 4 new multifamily loans in the month of December, increasing the loan count to 556 loans with a total portfolio balance of $1.34 billion. Permanent loan decreases, delinquencies increased by 2 loans to 8, with an overall delinquency rate just under 1%. There were no loans, construction loans, that were delinquent in December, nor were there any loans in forbearance. Any questions?
All right, if there's no questions for John, we'll go to the investment and swap report with Haseen.
So the report before you is a quarterly report. So for the investment, it does reflect a decrease in book value by approximately 196 million due to bond debt service to 3.5 billion from the last quarter. The weighted yield quarter over quarter did go up from 1.73 to 1.78%. For the swap, because we didn't do any variable rate for 2021, the number of swap remains at 39 with 9 counterparties. The notional amount did go down by 7.9 million due to amortization to 915 million. Due to that reduction, the weighted pay rate by the authority decreased to 3.065%. The mark-to-market value did decrease from a negative 136.6 million to 123.2 million due to the rising interest rate. I'll be happy to answer any question regarding the investment and swap reports.
Only question is, what's the status on the LIBOR transition?
LIBOR transition. Well, so we have Bob. So I think the big one is number one, we did adhere to the LIBOR protocol. Number two, we are looking at what's going on in DC regarding a federal legislation to deal with the LIBOR transition. And number three, we believe in at least when it comes to the swap, we believe that we have everything in place to deal with the LIBOR transition. On the bond side, we do have about 140 million of bonds remaining that is based on LIBOR. Last year, the board approved and we did reduce our LIBOR position by 218 million. So we are trying to look at, what would be the best cost approach for us. We are considering an omnibus approach to deal with the LIBOR. We are looking at that federal initiatives that I mentioned previously, or we may in fact refund those bonds using an alternate index, just like what we did last year.
I guess I'm not the sort of accounting changes when leverage. I'm not particularly worried about it. I mean, I don't think people look at this. I think everyone really looks at the accounting of the swap book and is concerned one or the other. The question really becomes, if you were going to end up having to refund change indexes, what impact that has, adverse or positive, on our funding, our historical funding margin, right? Because our assets are fixed, right? And now essentially the hedge of those, the funding of those assets now becomes variable. So we are exposed to some basis risk there.
Right. You're absolutely right.
And we have been modifying our floating leg recently to SIGMA. just to create some diversity within the portfolio.
What's the timing, Bob, on all this? I mean, I thought LIBOR was like, I know there's no more swaps in LIBOR. Are they still publishing anything?
I think it's the end of June of 23 is when the transition will occur,
Okay.
which, by the way, is not a surprise to me at all, because that will also be the 5-year mark roughly when SOFR actually made its debut in the markets for us, from the point of view of being able to track this stuff. So
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
I just want to follow up on the collateral discussion. So it seems to me as rates go up, our out of the money amount on these swaps is actually going to go down. But at some point, Jerry, were you talking about if it actually goes even higher, then our counterparties are going to need to post collateral in our benefit? We got to make sure that we're ready to receive that. Yeah.
Yeah, and we have to watch it, right? I mean,
Right.
it can get pretty squirrely.
yeah, we've except for the most recent swaps, we've got a couple 100 basis points to go before that occurs.
Yeah.
Okay, any more questions on investment and swap report? We'll go on to the internal audit report of Joyce.
Good morning. The first memo in your package is the audit activity for the latter half of 2021. It's followed by the audit plan, which summarizes the audit work completed for the entire year. So starting with CHFA audits, during the period, I just want to give you a few highlights on some of the things we've done. We've completed an audit of EMAP, which focused largely on the assistance funding and the loan servicing for this program. Management is implementing recommendations, including contemplating improvements to program collection efforts. The second review we did was an audit of HTCC compliance. It focused on the compliance monitoring requirements that went into effect in January 2020. Multifamily management is implementing recommendations to further improve the quarterly progress reporting and closeout monitoring activities. For example, comparing the HTCC funds spent to the program budget in the original scored application. We also completed a follow-up audit of single-family mortgage insurance claims. And the results of that review indicated that the vast majority of the audit recommendations from the original report had been implemented. So detailed audit reports for each of these 3 reviews are included in the detail of your report. So turning now to single-family loan servicers. So single-family loans are serviced by outside servicers. So we perform single-family servicer compliance reviews. They are limited scope and they focus on the processing and collection functions of the servicers. We largely look at compliance with key contract terms and insurer guidelines. So during the period, we completed a desk review of Webster Bank. We issued the review letter and we reviewed and accepted management's responses. This bank services approximately 6.5% of the single family whole loan portfolio. We also concluded our review of Norcom Mortgage. In terms of consulting activities, thank you. In lieu of doing an audit of IT security, we researched best practices to mitigate cybersecurity risks. We worked with IT management as they completed an assessment of controls using best practices from the Center for Internet Security, or CIS. This review will continue into 2022 with the results of the management assessment being incorporated into the IT strategic plan. So the second memo, which is at the end of your report, discusses the 2022 internal audit plan. A few words on how we create the plan. Annually, we review the top risks likely to affect all organizations as published by the Institute of Internal Auditors. We discuss key business priorities, risks, and changes with members of management. We update our risk assessments and we review the status of audit recommendations. So based on this analysis, the audit plan is developed. We may defer a review if a business function is undergoing significant change. So the audit plan becomes a subset of audits from the risk-based audit portfolio, a cyclical compliance review of select servicers from the servicer portfolio, and some planned consulting activities which are requested by management. We review the audit plan with management to ensure that our coverage aligns with their goals and objectives. And throughout the year, we may make changes to the plan based largely on changes to business priorities, our staffing resources, and servicer availability. So the 2022 internal audit plan, which is the last page of your report, focuses on various aspects of the multifamily business, including loan servicing performed by finance portfolio management. Specifically, we hope to review internal controls over the monitoring of the LIHTC compliance performed by an outside vendor, as well as the processing of multifamily escrows. We also plan to do follow-up audits to ensure recommendations have been implemented for some high-risk multifamily business functions, including underwriting, construction loan advances, and the monitoring and servicing of the multifamily loan portfolio. In 2022, the audit plan also includes reviews of 4 single-family loan servicers, representing a little more than a quarter of the single-family first mortgage portfolio. One of the servicers is being acquired, so the timing of our review is pending this action and may not occur in 2022. We also plan to review the processing of down payment assistance program loans serviced by Idaho. Idaho services about 2,700 loans with an approximate loan balance of $20 million. And it services or about a little less than a quarter of the authority's DAP loans. So the 2022 internal audit plan also includes some consulting activities known at this time. These include completing an analysis of project costs for an HTCC program award, as well as performing a limited scope review of the My Home CT program after it is up, operational, and implemented. Any new activities will be disclosed throughout the plan period. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
There's no questions for Joyce. I'd like a motion to approve the minutes of the last Audit and Finance Committee meeting on November 18th.
I'll move.
Second,
I'll second.
any discussion? Roll call vote.
Mary Abraham,
Aye.
Alexandra Dom,
I'll abstain since I was not present.
Tim Hodges,
Aye.
Kathy McKinnon,
Aye.
George Perez,
Yes.
Franklin Perry,
Aye.
Sarah Sanders,
Aye.
the 1 abstention.
Okay, now a motion
Oh.
to adjourn. Everyone in favor? I'm sorry, did I cut you off?
No,
Okay, motion to adjourn. Everyone in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, see you on the other side.